All right, welcome back. This is the third and final part for this post. And the next area we're going to talk about is artificial intelligence. Now, I'm sure you have all heard lots of buzz about artificial intelligence, right? And it's always portrayed as our great evil technical overlords will eventually take over and eliminate us because we're human beings are unnecessary. Well, that might happen someday. It won't be happening anytime soon. So a better way to sort of really understand artificial intelligence when you hear it spoken about is to replace the term AI with the phrase cheap predictions that are slightly better than human predictions, right? And what that means is AI is being used in systems and to do tasks that human beings used to do, and that over time, as humans developed more and more experience with something, they could get better at guessing what the next step would be based on what had just happened, right? So if you've had any kind of job, say, in any kind of service, right, it's like you start to develop a sense on, what a person is going to ask for, because you've had lots of people in a similar situation ask for the same thing. You can make a good guess, right? Artificial intelligence systems do the same thing. The difference is they do them a little bit better than really skilled humans, right? Providing the information that they've been trained on works. They never need to sleep. They never need to take a break. They run really, really, really fast, right? They can be scaled on to interact with lots and lots of people. So they're very powerful systems. So it's being used by business, government, all over the place to simplify and speed up interactions. And so maybe you've seen some demos, but overall, it's a technology that's being built into lots and lots of applications. So, again, designing for it, what to be aware of, the technology used to create it, and then places to follow and see some examples. Okay, so let's just step through a few here. All right, so how it started to impact work as designers. Now, this is back in 2017, but, I think it's still relevant, right? Some of the specifics are evolving, but still an okay place to start. Algorithm-driven design. Decisions are made based on rules, right? So, a really interesting article. This author also had a website, right, going into a lot of this stuff, sort of see the examples of, places where we're trying it out. So, interesting stuff to follow. Present and future, just kind of where we're at, where we're headed. Designer's Guide to AI-driven UX design. Heuristics apply to use cases to drive AI-powered experiences. Wow. Right, it's not unlikely that you will work on interactive systems if you get into the field where AI will be a component of how decisions are made, how interactions happen. So understanding the basics will be useful. Okay. AI design and practices guideline. And what this is this author has put together a listing of guidelines from lots of different companies about various aspects of their design practice and their product development that takes advantage of AI. So you can go through a lot of this stuff, sort of see, right, where this stuff is headed, how individual companies are doing this. So all interesting stuff. All right, this is the Microsoft research blog for human AI interaction. The Google blog on AI, get news and information, what Google's doing, right? The technology that they're using, TensorFlow, how they're training AIs to understand things. And one of the things about training an AI, right, it's like the AI will only be as good as the data that it's trained with, right? So in order to figure out how to make a prediction, it has to be given past events, right, and how those events turned out, right? This question was asked, his answer was the right answer. And that all works conceptually, right? It kind of makes sense. The downside is bias. So if bias is already built into the data, right? So say you're doing a project on real estate. Real estate is one of the worst offenders of bias, right? Racially, socioeconomically. So if your AI engine is evaluating people who might be a good credit risk to buy houses, and you train it on old data, well, what's the big surprise? Oh, you'll find that primarily white people have gotten mortgages and paid them off, and the number of black or sort of people of color much lower. The AI could conclude that, well, if you're a person of color, clearly, based on the historical data, you're not going to be a good credit risk because you didn't get a mortgage in the past or pay it off, right? This is obviously blatant racism. And so we have to be aware of these kinds of biases that are embedded in the data. And when we work on systems that are going to take advantage of historic data, that bias has to be accounted for, corrected. So, having diverse teams is really important when we're working on systems like that. So it's a key point to sort of keep in mind. Okay. So here's an example of one of Google's AI projects you may have seen, right? You upload your picture and then it does a search and looks for a match, and it sort of evaluates your portrait and then tries to find a famous portrait that looks like you, right? So it's good gag, good fun, right? And then you can share that with your friends and say, here was, my Renoir that looked like me, that kind of thing. But again, they do a whole bunch of different types of projects and different types of games. So fun to keep track of and sort of see what they're up to. What's our next thing? Yeah. Okay. So let's go. So our next subject area is voice, right? So if you've used Siri or Alexa or Google, done conversation, right? Incorporating that into your app could be a really interesting process, right? Being able to speak, have it listen to you, answer, pull up your information. So I've just linked to a bunch of design guides for the various platforms. So just from UX Collective, sort of an overall things to consider. The Amazon Alexa voice design guide, right? So this is the actual design process of what you would go through, right? A little more background on getting started with the guide. Actions on Google, so their conversation design, how to design an action, right? How to use resources and make one of these things. Siri's guidelines, right? So here's the Siri introduction, how to get your message app, get it all working. Yeah, that's our next section. So, all right. So our next section is called No UI Interface. And this is sort of the latest next step, right, is to think about interactions that don't require buttons. Can we come up with ways with systems that will interact with that, predict our behavior, track our motion, our movements, our eyes, all kinds of sci-fi type of things that just let us interact with the world and the systems without having to sort of pull up a button, click on the menu, swipe through the options and pick something. There's pros and cons, and a lot of these sort of talk about what's been tried, and the No UI book really kicked off a big online discussion among designers. So it's just something to be aware of. You may come across in going through this stuff, but we'll just take a look here. All right, so this is all the voice stuff, right? There it is. So just, a little overview, write up what they're after. Interacting with products, haptic feedback, that means like feeling it, right? Can you do interactions where something vibrates or it moves or, context aware? Is it know where you're at, right? And they go into explanations of how this stuff works and what they were trying. More transparent interactions. Right? This is the book. Best interface is no interface. And, I'd also link to a counter argument in response to the book. All right. Okay. Lastly, and I just put this in because, there's a lot of material in this post and a lot of areas. And as I've mentioned throughout these videos, there's way more than any of us could ever get through, right? So, and there's no expectation that you're going to know and learn, like do all this stuff for this class. So that's not the point. Again, I just wanted to point this all out to you because it's a growing field and it's growing exponentially in every direction. One of the things that I've had to face as a professional over the years is continuous learning, right? And if you've taken classes with me before, I've mentioned this multiple times. The technology just keeps evolving, right? And if you want to work in the industry, if you want to stay in the industry, you have to keep evolving and learning as well. We talk a lot about learning in school. I remember when I went to school, no one actually taught me how to do it. Somehow I picked it up over the years. But these resources I have found sort of post-college have really helped me get much better at teaching myself, staying up to date, figuring out how to quickly evaluate, get through, incorporate, and then work with new information in my career. And I wholeheartedly recommend all of these resources to you. All right, the first 20 hours, how to learn anything fast. Fantastic advice. Totally works. Right? Ultra learning and getting better at it. This class, free, enroll for free. 2 million people, can't be wrong. It's one of the most popular MOOCs or massive online courses in the world. Fantastic information about how to really learn and sort of keep yourself up to date in basically any subject matter you want to take on. Again, making it stick, right? It's how to remember this stuff, how to sort of get better at it. And then finally, this was sort of the first learning resource I ever came across ages and ages ago. How to read a book. At the time, I thought I knew how to read books. After reading this book, I realized I really had no idea. And have become a much better reader, much better at getting the salient and useful information out of nonfiction books than I ever imagined I could be. It was really an eye-opening resource. So, all right. So that covers everything, right? And here's my one big tip for learning. It's read. It really works. At least it works for me. Videos are pretty good too. All right. That covers everything. So, right, keep in mind as you're designing for your Project 2 and Project 3 how you might incorporate any of these areas into your project, make it more interesting, more enjoyable. So that is it for this series. So thank you and good luck.